All right. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Doug Nelson. We're meeting for the first time in Principal at Wooten, and tonight I have the task of presenting information to you all about the Maryland report card and the score that has come out for our school, Wooten High School. Just want to say to Camille, to Nira, to George, and Yaiwen, glad you're joining me this evening. Just a little bit about the structure, then I'll go ahead and share the screen. This presentation is kind of designed to be a bit content heavy up front. So we're going to go through kind of all of the big aspects of the Maryland report card. And then the presentation tonight is going to finish with an opportunity for any questions that you might have. So while we're going through all of this, if there are any questions, and with the size of our group tonight, I'm sure we're very much going to be able to go back to parts of this presentation. So if you want to revisit any parts when it is time for question and answer, I'm sure we're going to be able to do that. So if you give me just a moment, I'm going to go ahead and bring up the presentation for tonight, and then we'll go ahead and get started with the presentation. So today what we're going to talk about is background information about the Maryland report card and a little bit about that Maryland report card. This is slide number 2. So the Maryland report card system, in a very basic level, is an accountability system for individual schools and local school systems, meaning each school and MCPS and every school across the state of Maryland is a part of this accountability system, in which the measures that are a part of the Maryland report card produce a specific report that has information for that school individually. And then there's also measures that are for each of the local school systems themselves. So to put that in context for our school, there's specific information in our reports to Wooten directly, as well as to MCPS as a whole. The program is overseen by the Maryland State Department of Education, MSDE, and they set up all the criteria and ways in which the measures are applied for schools and school systems. The MSD report card provides information that is to be usable for educators, students, and families. So usable in different ways, but the report is going to provide, for example, data that educators can use when we're thinking about where do we really have strengths or where can we improve. For students, it's going to give a summary of information that they tell us by way of surveys and information that's collected as a part of the report card process. For families, it's going to give you an update about how your local schools are doing at all levels, because we're going to get this annual report card that provides information to you. And finally, the Maryland report card for schools at different levels, elementary, middle, and high school. There are different measures that are in place. So the way that an elementary school is measured and how they have certain performance measures that are a part of their report card, they have different measures when compared to, let's say, high school. A difference would be high school has a graduation rate measure. Obviously, that is not going to be in place at a middle school like Robert Frost, right? So different ways in which we're measured. And on to slide 3, please. The graph that you're going to see next, these are the high school indicators specifically. And as I mentioned before, this graph will look different at the different levels. But this graph is going to give you a sense about the different categories of the indicators that are a part of the Maryland report card, and then how much they are weighted or how much they are worth. So certain indicators have more value or are a bigger percentage of what goes into determining how a student or how a school's report card is built. So let's go ahead and start in the upper right-hand category here around academic achievement, which is the first category in the report and the one that just comes up first. So in academic achievement, we're talking about performance measures from the state in English and math. As I mentioned earlier in my principal update, at high schools as a part of MCAP, students, for example, are going to take an English assessment at the end of English 10 that is a graduation requirement. And student performance in regards to that measure in English 10, that becomes a part of the data that then is the academic achievement category. And it's the same with the math measure. The requirement math measure for high schoolers is an algebra, NSL measures, so on and so forth. They're required tests, but in English and math, that informs the report card results. The next category here, 15% of our overall measure, goes to graduation rate. And one little detail, graduation rate's a pretty clear and direct mark. You know how many students graduate annually from your school. One thing that is considered into the Maryland report card is the adjusted 5-year rate as well. So what will happen is at the end of 4 years, let's say in the class of 2023, we're preparing to do this right now, we will deem that a student has done everything that they need to graduate and they're going to graduate at the end of May. But there are some students in that same cohort that for whatever reason, they may take a little bit longer. They may need to take one class over the summer and they'll be a summer graduate. Or some students actually have a couple of classes based on their plan for high school graduation in which they graduate the next year, the 5-year cohort. All of that is considered into the results, right? What they're looking at is graduation in time. After that, you're going to see 10% of our overall measure indicator comes from English language proficiency. So all high schools, including Wooten, we have students who are EMLs, English language learners, right? So these students who receive services, they also have a measure for how they are reaching English language proficiency. And based on how they perform in that category, 10% of the overall points in the Maryland report card come from this measure. And then 2, I really like to bring these 2 measures together. They're shown as 2 parts of the pie, but oftentimes the sub-indicators or the actual criteria underneath readiness for post-secondary success and school quality and student success are in the same category. So they're listed amongst these 2. So if you put them all together, that's 45% of our measure. And things that you're going to find under readiness and school quality include how many students at our school have full access to what the state calls a well-rounded curriculum, right? I'm going to share an example of where schools needed to go in order to be better in a place to meet well-rounded curriculum expectations. The state of Maryland says all students should have technology access. Years ago, that was not necessarily a requirement, that 100% of students did that. So that is an example of where students had to, or schools had to adjust in order to make sure we said all of our students have a full, well-rounded curriculum. There's other criteria there, but technology, I think, is a good example that highlights what we need to do. On track in 9th grade, this is a great measure, I think. So when students are done after their first year, we are evaluated about how many students stayed on track to complete in a 4-year completion plan, right? And so if students are off that track, then this accountability measure picks up on that. Chronic absent rate. So if you have students that are absent more than 10% of the time, and then we also give an annual student and staff survey, the results from those surveys come back to become actual points and measures in the system. And then they're all part of that 45% measure. Okay, so these are some of the indicators specifically for high schools. And let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. What I'm going to show you next, this is an example high school report and what it looks like. So Brian, there we go, thank you. So all high schools are going to receive a report that looks like this. We're going to start with the sample report because the indicators are really nicely marked on this slide. And then we're going to take a look at what Wooten's specifically says, okay? So each year, the state will release an updated report. So if you actually go to the Maryland report card site, you're going to be able to see multiple years of reports. Please know there are a couple of years without reports because of COVID. So things you're going to see the school's name right at the top. Indicator number 2 is the star measure. So the state is going to give every school a certain number of stars out of 5 total. And you are going to see how your school did with the star rating. The next thing you're going to see is the percentile rank, which is out of 100% based on the total number of points you can earn. In what percentile specifically did this school fall? You'll see the example school here was at 71%. Indicator number 4, now this is going to go into points now. You're going to see some columns here. The first column on the left is the possible points that a school can earn. And those points are going to vary based upon the indicator. Then next to that, it's going to show what points have been earned by that school. So academic achievement, that's the first indicator, that is 1A. You'll see that there's a possible 30 points to earn, and this example school has earned 21 out of those 30 points. Then it's going to show you in column number 3 what are the annual targets and whether a school improved. So in order to determine success, a target has to be identified. And before, really, schools used to be measured on how many students you had meet that target. But this measure actually has another component called improvement. So schools meet their annual target and need to meet improvement in order to be fully successful. So you'll see this example school did that under academic achievement. But it is possible that a school meets the annual target but does not meet the improvement target, meaning your school, your students from one year to the next didn't improve enough in one specific area. And so you've met the target, but not improvement. It's possible that your school didn't meet the annual target, but still improved enough, and where you would have one or the other. And then it's possible for you to have not met the target and not improved enough. So this is a very interesting kind of way to take a look at column 3 and 4. And I always find this one very interesting because it's going to show in varying ways how your school did, both to the target and improvement. And then the last one, indicator number 7, this is your percentage. It's going to actually calculate the total points that the school earned, and it's going to put it over the 100 points possible to earn. And it's going to give you a percentage rate. That percentage rate and the stars that you earn, those connect. Okay, so that breaks down how the school report looks. And on the next slide, we're going to see how Wooten specifically did for this year's report. So let's take a look at that now. So you see here for Wooten High School, again, the place to start is take a look overall at what that star percentage is. So out of 5 possible points, Wooten has earned 5 of those stars. That's great news for us. It shows that there's a lot of strength and a lot of success there. I'm going to finish this, breaking down this report, and then Camille, I see you have a question, so we're going to take that in just a moment. So we have 5 out of 5 stars. The next thing you're going to see is that percentile rank. We have some more information on slides coming up about how the percentile breaks down. But that 95 percentile goes back to the 5 stars earned. And as I said before, the next thing I tend to look at is then I go right down to the bottom of the report to look at how the points equal the percentage if you can earn 100 points total. So for Wooten, the total points that we have earned in all of our indicators is 80.4 points out of a possible 100, and then that gives us a total percentage of 80.3%. And the five stars kind of correlate to that percentage earned. So those are the big picture numbers. Just a little note then, as I said before, I talked about some of the indicators and how they correlate to the actual points, just breaking this down. So academic achievement, that's indicator number 1, possible points of 30. Wooten earned 23 points. Graduation rate, that's a possible 15 points. Wooten has earned 14.7 points. We've earned almost all of them in graduation rate, but our graduation validation process is very strong, and so the vast majority of our students graduate with no issue. A place to show some improvement, English language learners. Out of a possible 10 points, our students have earned 5.5 points. So that shows some area for growth and improvement for our students. Readiness for secondary success. Out of a possible 10 points, we have earned 9.2 points. And then the last one is school quality. These are those surveys that I was mentioning earlier. School quality overall and well-rounded curriculum is in there as well. You have 35 possible points, and we have earned 27.6 points, right? So those are some things within the actual numbers of the school report. And Camille, if you want to hop off mute and ask that question, this will be a good time, and then we'll take a look at the next slide.
Hi, Mr. Nelson. Thank you for the presentation. I just was asking if you could maybe enlarge the screen, or I've actually opened up the Google Doc since I've typed in the question, but it's hard to see the figures. It's hard to see the wording. Maybe
I'm sorry about that. The other one I'll let you know, like probably the clearest one is if you actually look at Wooten's report, which you can find by just searching Maryland report card. that one, that'll give you the whole report start to finish, and it'll make some of those numbers a little clearer. Okay, Brian, if we can take a look at slide number 6. This is just a little note on how stars are determined, right? It's really the percentage overall of how many points that you earn becomes a percentage. And then these percentage categories correlate to the stars that a school is given. So you're going to see here, if you have achieved greater 75% or greater of your total points, then you're a 5-star school. If it's between 60 to 74.9, a 4-star school. So on and so forth, all the way down to 0 to 29.9 is a 1-star school. Okay, so schools, you'll see across our entire district, have varying points and star assignments based on those points that they have earned. But one thing that I do want to take you back to is the ratings are consistent to that percentage. So all schools across the entire state, for example, if you are a 3-star school, it's 45 to 59.9. That is the percentage that would place you with that star rating. And slide number 7, please. I wanted to spend a little time here because English language proficiency for all of our schools, and including Wooten, is very much a point of focus. So based on school performance over time, schools receive certain designations. It basically is a way to say school is in this year of improvement because they need to improve a little more, let's say, in a category like this one. So a large number of schools at MCPS, particularly at the high school level, are in improvement in and around English language proficiency. So that is just what I want you to walk away with, is that is targeted improvement. Wooten is not a TSI school, is kind of how we designate them. But our students in this category, compared to other academic measures, we have area for improvement here. So this is one that we do need to pay attention to when working with our students. Right now, MCPS has a goal of moving all schools forward in 6 years. But how many your improvement target changes by where your students are. I do want you to know our measure is at 5.5 out of 10 possible points. And you will see that we are above this initial goal already by 1 whole point. That's great news for us. But we also need to make sure that we continue to see incremental growth, because we're responsible for improvement as well, even if we're already above this proficiency. So it is an area and a place for improvement for us, just like many other schools. I just wanted you to kind of know and understand how the school system is looking incrementally at improving English language performance, basically across all of our schools. So the next slide we're going to get into, this is going to show you in clearer points what is happening for Wooten specifically. This is our school's reports when it comes to performance measures and such things. So we're going to start with academic achievement. This is out of 30 points. So this is a large measure, a large number of points for the overall star assignment comes from this measure. And in here, it's going to show you not only how we did, so you'll see the 30 possible points. It's going to give you that bar graph that's going to show you we have earned 23.4 of the needed 30 points. It's then going to show you the measure in 4 specific places. The first is percentage in mathematics. So how many students were proficient in math measures? And you see our result was 83.8%. That gets us 6.3 points out of a possible 7.5. The next one is proficiency in English language arts. That's 88.8 at Wooten. That's 6.7 points. So you get to see now kind of how results become earned points. Also in here is average performance level in mathematics. So how are students like the average overall performance measure in math. And you will see the points here shift, right? So where proficiency was measured by MCAT performance, for example, now we're taking a look at average performance overall. We have 4.44 out of 7.5 points here. Show some need in math average performance. And then average performance level in English, this is 3.3 and 6.1 points out of 7.5. For most schools, what you will see in these performance measures, this is pretty consistent in a large number of schools, that the need for improvement in math seems to be greater than in English language arts. So next slide, this is going to show you graduation rate and how we do. This one, again, a real strength for Wooten in the grad validation process. Just a little bit of note about that. Multiple times throughout the year, the counseling services team, administrators, and what we call the grad validation team, they meet with central office to look at every component of graduation rate. And the reason for this conversation and essentially the data dive is to ensure everything is done to make sure students are graduating on time and that we're not missing some type of measure that would hold them back from graduation. So Wooten, our graduation rate is nearly 100%, far above 95% or greater. So we have earned almost all of our points here, and it's really for the diligent work of that team to make sure that they are on track. You'll see that the 4-year adjusted rate is 97.9%, and then the 5-year, because there's always a handful of students that maybe have a summer school course to take or one more course to take as a 5th-year student, and then they graduate. So by the time, and then we're at 98.5%, that gets us almost all of our 5 needed points here. Next slide, this is going to show you the breakdown for English language learners. So English language learners earn proficiency, or they meet their measure by taking an assessment called the WIDA, and it assesses students in listening, reading, writing, and speaking. And based on student proficiency, this then results in a results score. Again, the goal is 4.5 points here. So we have exceeded that measure. We have a 5.5. But again, you will see that there is some room for improvement here also, with earning 5.5 points. So this is a place in which we can make points. And very likely, if we do some intentional work to improve, we're also meeting improvement. One thing I'd like to highlight here is that schools are responsible for improvement measures. So we have more opportunity to meet improvement measures with English language learners than we do with graduation rate, because of where the graduation rate is. So again, different way for schools to have to look at it. It's not just enough to meet the milestone, considering that you have an improvement measure now. So next slide, please. And then this one is quality of school environment. We have a good number of points here. We're doing well in a number of categories, but I also want to show some things about how measures or things that your students are currently doing, how they come back to the school to inform this report card. One thing we have to look at is chronically absent students. Chronically absent students are any students that have absent rates over 10%. So here we have 86% of our students not chronically absent. That's 13 out of 15 points. Right. So we have a good measure there, but there's also some room for improvement. Anything that you do to up that percentage earns you more points if you're working specifically on your absentee rate. Now, the school survey for educator and for students. Students in the month of March took their Maryland school survey. These results that students submit become then a result score and points that we can earn. So for the school survey for student, 4.5 were the total points we earned, 4.5 was the result, 3.1 points earned. You'll see surveys for educators, teachers, and staff do the same thing. You will see student results are more overall points to the report card than the staff result. So they're looking with, more points to what the students are telling us about their experience at school. Some of the things that students tell us about: do they feel safe at school? Do they feel like they have a positive environment to learn? Here is one in which Wooten consistently gets some low marks, is the overall quality of the physical plant of the building, which I'm not surprising anyone by that, but our students tell us in this survey that is something that they are dissatisfied in. That is one place in which we see those points drop off because of our building and its quality. And the last one here is access to a well-rounded curriculum. This measure really says that students are taking a broad variety of courses and that schools are making them available and not just, let's say, only focusing like more in math and English courses, that we have broader electives, so on and so forth, and that students are accessing them. Okay. Next, what I'm going to show you is just a little bit the breakdown by student group. One thing that I do want all of you all to know is that our reports come back to us based on specific student groups. And I know this one's a little hard to read as well. It's very clear in the report card itself, but this is going to show you annual target by students in specific groups, whether that be a racial identification, whether that is a student who has an IEP, whether that student is an English language learner, or whether that student is economically disadvantaged, or we would say farms in MCPS. You're going to see the specific measures and how students did with that annual target broken down and whether we improved. This is for a general school and not for Wootton's. So next, let's take a look at Wootton's. So this is our school's report. Take a look. The one side is math, the other side is for ELA. You're going to first see how we did in our measures for the annual target and whether we improved. So for all of our students, we met the measures, right? But we did not meet the improvement target. So meaning our students did well, but did not make enough improvement from the last time this was measured to this year to say that we improved enough. But in some places that did happen, right? So for white students in this report in math, 85.1%, that is what was earned, that met the target and showed improvement enough for these students. So we went up there, right? We also saw an ELA. Where did we meet the target? Well, we did for Hispanic Latino students. We did an ELA, both the annual target and the improvement. You're really looking for both. That shows that we're going in the right direction, meeting the target and improving, which is what we're looking for. So this just really shows us across all of our different groups where students are meeting targets, where they are not, and where they are also improving and where they are not. Okay, so next one. Oh, it's time for questions. All right, so we'll open it up. Our group is small enough at this point, I'm sure we can just hop off mute if there are any specific questions you would like me to specifically address.
Doug, I'll jump in with a question on that last slide. I can go back. Some of the categories, economically disadvantaged and English learner, is not in the Wooten numbers. Is there a reason why those are not counted?
Let me take a break. All right. Yeah, I don't think I can answer that one for you, honestly. The only thing I would have to compare, I would want to take a look at what another school's report has, right? The only thing that I can tell you, Brian, is that the image of the general school one, I did not clip that. I borrowed that from another PowerPoint presentation.
Okay.
So I wonder if those categories do not match, like the general one and then what is actually in school reports. So I would just keep that in mind, but we certainly have both economically disadvantaged students and English language learners at our school. So I can't really tell you why they wouldn't be in our report.
All right, thank you.
I have just a general question, and thank you again for the presentation.
Sure.
I was wondering, what does Wooten do, or does Wooten have a policy for how they approach improvement in these, in the category, or math and ELA for all students?
Mm-hmm.
To and what do they do? What does the school do to improve students' achievement in those subjects year by year?
Sure. I'll start with the academic one, and then I'll also give an example of where we would do something different. So I'll start with academic improvement, and generally schools' approach, and this is very consistent in MCPS, is we are going to write our school improvement plan with two major goals. And one is going to be a literacy goal, and one is going to be a math goal. And the idea behind writing your school improvement goal is you are making it very clear which groups need to improve in both of those academic measures. And generally, our goals also highlight our groups with the most need for improvement. So if I were to take a look at the one that we're looking at right now, what jumps out to me is for Black African American performance in mathematics. We likely have a school improvement goal there because there is a gap. 55.6%, while it meets the target, there is a big gap between other subgroups at our school. And that's one of our lower measures where you compare to, let's say, performance in ELA, where it goes up by 20 points there. So we will build school improvement goals around those gaps that we see. Another one to highlight, though, you would not necessarily put, for example, chronic absenteeism into a school improvement goal. So if we wanted to improve with the number of chronically absent students that we had, that generally is work around the student well-being team. So every school, including Wooten, we have a team that works on chronic absenteeism. And so that team would work on specific students whose attendance is in excess of 10. And we even have students that have in excess of 20%. So that team is specifically writing plans for those students who are not coming to school enough. So those are two examples of what we would do.
Thank you. Can I ask a follow-up question to that?
Please.
With those school improvement goals, are those, publicly shared, with the PTA? Is that, how are those tracked too?
The last part, it might have caught, but did I hear you say, how are they tracked?
Yep. Yes. Yes.
So yes, our school improvement plans are shared. They're for sure publicly consumable. And one thing, Camille, like this is something that's interesting to you. We always reach out over the summer because we're required at the school. Brian would have been here for this over the summer. That ILT during leadership, which is when we're initially working on our school improvement plan, we have to include parents. So that's a component of that. So you can even be a part of this process if you want to experience this with the school. So once we write the goal, we will then complete what it's a results column, an anticipated results column. So we're going to try to predict where we think we're going to go. And that's one way that we look to see whether we're making the progress where we want to. For example, a school might put in their predicted results column that in math, we might want to look at how our targeted groups perform on district measures, because if they're improving on district measures, then they're probably likely going to do well on that state measure too, because generally the district measures are a little more rigorous than the state measure. So if you've got that, you've likely got the other. But the other thing that MCPS has for us, Camille, they have their evidence of learning measures, which is the big district way of looking at how students are doing. So we are asked to report out on our progress there with teams that come out and visit the school and speak to us about how our results are doing and where our students are going. And we have a whole new set of milestones that MCPS, it looks like we'll have in place for next year to basically say all students need to be here with this measure in all 4 years of high school. So it looks like we even have an additional measure coming our way for next year. Just in summary, thank you for coming out for this presentation. For me, this is going to be something I talk about a lot as measures and how students are doing, but I know that sometimes this can be a little dense and heavy information. But if there is just one person you can pass along that you were part of this presentation, or to go check out to see how the school is doing with this report card, and also maybe check out another another school in the cluster and just see how we're doing in MCPS overall. I do believe it is helpful information for parents to have, to know that all that you invest in our schools and the system and MCPS, that you give us a lot. So to know that there is a way in which this is measured, that you can see some of the results for all that you give us. I think that's a very important structure to have in place. And I would really love for people to know about it. We have a lot to celebrate in our report, but I also do appreciate how, even though we've got 5 stars that's up front to take a look at, when you get down into the actual data picture, you very clearly can see areas of which we can improve that have been identified for us. And that, I think, is very important to the culture of the school, that we're always looking at that. So please tell others about this information, and I hope that you found it informative this evening. Thank you so much.